At this point in a briefish history of Assassin's Creed, I'm running into something of an obstacle. You see, my intros peaked back when I kept implying every protagonist should just absolutely rail me, and I've just been coasting ever since. Joking, I can obviously continue doing that at my leisure. I just have standards. No, the real issue is just the usual struggle against the crashing waves of the soulless YouTube algorithms. You can spend most of a totally hypothetical September and October arduously planning and creating and uploading videos to be timely with big happenings in your particular niche, trying to build on momentum after YouTube gave you a single massive success purely on happenstance. But then no, why would YouTube possibly want to share Spider-Man gaming content during a month with a massive Spider-Man gaming release? Sorry, I'm being a grumpy little bitch. Because YouTube can't make up its fucking mind about whether it'll show my videos to 100,000 people or 73. This overlaps with Assassin's Creed content, because we're currently covering a portion of the series that isn't necessarily as likely to bring in eyeballs as quickly. This era doesn't have the shiny relevance of the newest games, or the nostalgic classic appeal of the early games, or even the nuanced storytelling of the America's saga. Hell, last time I had to spend a 40-minute segment just to discuss the Chronicles trilogy. I get why people are less interested in those. While I absolutely think Syndicate easily exceeds its contemporaries, I'm deeply suspicious that YouTube's corporate meat grinder maw will not care. You can help make more of a difference. If you like, comment, and watch as much of the video as you can manage, you'll help delay my content getting churned into digital sausage so cruelly in this wasteland website that literally chooses preferential treatment for content thieves who fucking dox other creators because they're fat enough cash cows. Subscribing and hitting the bell, if you haven't done either, will also let you see when I've uploaded, since YouTube appears to share my content with the consistency of cheap bootleg cottage cheese. If you know someone who might enjoy these videos, maybe even point them in my direction. Without further additional whiny ado, this is a briefish history of Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Syndicate appears in an interesting place in the Assassin's Creed lineup. While several other titles, primarily Unity, were in development, Ubisoft Quebec was like, hey guys, we can make one too. And you know what? The cheeky little bastards did make one. It's called Assassin's Creed Syndicate. The reason this timing is interesting is because this project was significantly underway by the time Unity started getting pelted by used prophylactics in the public square. The games following have some pretty severe course correction trying to get distance away from Unity, but Syndicate couldn't really do that. All they could do was have the PR guys emphasize the dedicated single-player focus and make sure it was as polished as an Assassin's Creed game can reasonably be expected to be. And honestly, being a relatively controversy-free Assassin's Creed really did some long-term good for the title. Because, as it turns out, Syndicate was also the last classic Assassin's Creed before the titles went full RPG hacky-slashy for the next few entries. This would be the last time we saw much of the series' gameplay raison d'etre for the following 8 years. To put that into perspective, by Syndicate, the series was 8 years old. They doubled the franchise's lifespan without including the most distinctive elements of the franchise. Between that and Unity's rocky reception, Syndicate actually gets a few bonus points just because it existed as it did when it did. There are 2 primary ideas that form Syndicate's basis. The first, instead of one playable assassin, there are 2 twins, Jacob and Eevee Fry. Missions typically require one or the other, but otherwise you can switch between them on the fly. Despite sharing most of the same skills, they both have slight specialties for combat and stealth, respectively. The other idea is that these 2 run their own street gang, the Rooks. It's like Gangs of New York, but in London. Yes, this was something that the Assassins had tried back in Rogue as actual Gangs of New York. No, it did not work out for them there. Sure hope it doesn't backfire for them here. Foreshadowing. For the next video. Yes, I am yet again shilling for a video that does not currently exist. Since Victorian England is the most modern history the main Ascreed games have covered, asterisk, there are some tweaks made to get around a relatively modern London. The parkour basics from Unity don't themselves change, still keeping the parkour up and parkour down on separate buttons. Although some complex stuff and parkour opportunities provided by the world have been lessened. If you're a pro-Unity free-running fanatic, you'll miss them, but if you're a new player or just found Unity's systems unwieldy, you won't mind it. The primary reason they did this is, with even taller buildings and even wider roads, old strategies don't really match up with the new game world. So the first edition is horse-drawn buggies for you to hijack. Yes, it's Grand Theft Carriage. I'm not exaggerating. These feel more like cars with horses taped to the front than anything else. Horses won't get you up a wall though, so the Fry Twins have steampunk grappling hooks built in next to their hidden blades. It is reminiscent of Connor's Eagle Flight from Tyranny of King Washington in function, which honestly means it's sort of the grapnel gun and line launcher from Arkham Asylum rolled into one. Some people did not like this, since it makes parkour that much more obsolete, and bluntly does often turn into press button to win climb. But this game would be fucking slow without it, so I let it slide. It is also quite fun to use in motion, which means I will sometimes default to this over horse NASCARing my way around the city. Now, because I hyperfixate on weird details, I do want to talk about something I always notice with fictional grappling hooks. See if I can ruin them for anyone else. In fiction, grappling hooks are these convenient, compact little things that can reach out wherever the plot requires. But they actually have to be able to store all of that rope, cable, cord, or whatever else somewhere. When you see videos of people making these things in real life, they often just have massive external spools they have to wear. It's technically something I notice in the Arkham games thanks to the thick-ass cables his Batclaw uses, but Batman has 30 goddamn years of grappling pistol precedent, so I can't really call it out there. However, Assassin's Creed doesn't, and it's a rather egregious example, so I can bitch about it here. You don't have to take my word for it. My buddy Wes does engineering stuff, and I'll let him explain it. Alright Wes, did you get the schematic I sent through to you?
I did, and I had some time to review it. What's going on?
Awesome. So, with all of your, engineering mechanical expertise, where the hell is this thing supposed to store the just yards and yards of cable that it would actually take to work? Doesn't fit, right?
No, it's in the cable box. Right below the... Yeah, there's a little pulley thing, and right below that is where the cable goes. Are you dumb? Are you a McDummerson? Are you a dumb doo-doo head? Did your mom drink dumb juice? Do your parents know you're dumb? Does your wife know you're dumb?
Combat, similar to parkour, also shares a skeleton with Unity, but is changed enough that I can appreciate this system a touch more. There's a more consistent mechanic for dodging gunfire. A prompt appears to dodge. Simple as that. The prompt uses the tool button, so if you have your own gun equipped, it gets even better. You just Han Solo them so that they cannot shoot you. Enemies can block you, so there is a stun option, and there is a combo tracker where higher score improves your attacks. If you squint, it could be mistaken for an Arkham Light system, though it is far less fluid and far more sticky than those games. You're more likely to attack the wrong enemy here than most of this series, and until you have some high-level gear and abilities, you'll be doing a lot of very fast but very low damage attacks. See, unlike some entries, which differentiate their weapon types with light, normal, and heavy options, Syndicate essentially offers light, lighter, and lightest. Sure, it's pretty justified, as we finally hit a time period where wearing a bastard sword around in public is considered a social faux pas, and the choices all at least make logistical sense. We have cane swords, which are those trick canes that have blades inside the handles, kukris, which can be reasonably concealed within a large overcoat, and make sense considering England's strong Indian ties, and brass knuckles, which are concealed on their knuckles. Syndicate did manage to improve the finishers, which I didn't like from last time. Enemies still go into a wobbly near-death state, but they're not out of the fight just yet and can still attack. If you can get a bunch of them into this state, when you take down one, it'll initiate a finisher on everyone in range in this state too. When it works. It is finicky, often missing one or two enemies that are perfectly in range, but it's still fun trying to see how many people you can line up accordingly. While it's not my preference over the kill streak system we lost, it's still better than Unity's strategy of spam smoke bombs so I can get this over with faster. Stealth has comparatively few changes this time around, other than just reintroducing whistling. The biggest addition is kidnapping. If you can get behind someone undetected, you can coerce compliance to bring them in alive, appearing to be casually strolling with them to enemies at enough of a distance. It's an okay system, if a little unintuitive to learn at first. They can try to escape until you have the right perks to prevent that, thankfully available early on, and you also have to keep track of how fast you are moving because there's a dynamic radius that blows your cover if enemies enter it. Kidnapping is a skill with decent versatility. Once you've mastered it, please don't quote mine me for blackmail purposes there, but way back during my first playthrough, I didn't enjoy learning it all that much. Rook gang members have a few gameplay functions calling back to guilds and assassin recruits, but mostly feel like the homies that wander around the city in the Saints Row series. They're primarily there if you want backup. Otherwise, much of the game's side content is centered on the mechanics of building up your gang's influence and territory, conquering who gets to do the organized crime in each district. It's certainly something familiar to a lot of other Grand Theft likes, but the activities are all fun, and they did ensure they also double as weakening the Templar hold on London, too. See, the Templars are directly and unambiguously running things legally via capitalism. And because the exploitation of workers and the ability to fall through the social system's cracks are both directly necessary for capitalism to function, not even my words here, capitalists outright state it if you fucking listen. The Templars are also running things illegally too, through their gang, the Blighters. So the citizens who don't lawfully obey them are still unlawfully obeying them. Suckers. These missions directly counter one or both points of Templar influence. Freeing children from Templar factories, clearing rival gang strongholds, just murdering Templars directly as per usual, that kind of thing. A great example are the missions to kidnap high-profile criminals to turn into the police, because you're using the Templars' own systems against them. You remove their pawns from their operations, using their own manipulative legal system, persuading the police to turn more of a blind eye to your crimes, which is an exploit initially built in for Templar advantage. All cops are blind to their true role in the scheme, so they have no clue they're helping to undo the system they're being paid to enforce. Also, you're also building up loyalty with various allies as you complete their activities. For example, completing the very fun fight clubs increases loyalty with a man in a silly hat. This system really only unlocks new gear, so this one probably could have been fleshed out further, but it does encourage interacting with the activities in the world. Of course, you can't have a Ubisoft open world without collectibles, and the ones here sure are collectibles. In the past, I've raged against Animus data fragments, but they have made them a smidge dumber somehow. At least, data fragments imply some degree of utility per storing bits of information. Now they're just helix glitches. Like, the Animus is just bugging out right there. Touch it. There are also pressed flowers, which unlock new outfit colors, and if you collect all of them too early, spoil the least interesting romance in the franchise. Music boxes replace the Nostradamus enigmas, unlocking precursor robes for Eevee. These are conceptually cool, but are far too visually distracting for me to use for very long. Collectibles keep going from there. There are also beer bottles, and posters, and royal correspondences on top of the overabundance of unguarded chests these games always contain. It's a bit much, even by series standards. Let's look at the tools in your arsenal this time. Guns have progressed, mostly being revolvers now, and since people have stopped wearing metal armor, throwing knives are back to being very efficient again. Also, now that I've stopped to think about it, the knife crossbow last time may be cool, but it is definitely overcomplicated, considering the goal. You can also just throw the knife to shank a motherfucker over there. Much less risk of mechanical failure, and you're not stuck reloading each time. Smoke bombs and berserk poison darts are back for yet another entry, though the latter can also poison several guards at once now if fired into a fire. And we get a new item invented by Alexander Graham Bell, Telephone Dude, goddamn electric grenades. They briefly stun enemies and outright kill civilians pretty much every time I try to use the damn things. I would have assumed they would just stun civilians too, but I'm feeling less confident in my engineering knowledge these days, for some reason.
How's it feel to be so dumb? Thank God you called me, or else you wouldn't know how dumb you were. Maybe I should do your channel. Have one less dumb person doing your channel. God, you're dumb.
Outfit customization is back, but is significantly reduced from Unity. Instead of changing each individual piece, most of the outfits are one piece, with only gauntlets, belts, and capes changing specific appearances. And since only Jacob gets belt customization, and only Eevee gets cape customization, that is even more limited than it initially sounds. It does help costumes be more cohesive, but it's a goddamn shame I cannot mix and match Jacob's hats. Thankfully, the skill point system no longer artificially blocks you from getting the full experience like it did in Unity. None of the default skills are gate-kept like they were there. Double assassinations are the first thing unlocked in the tutorial to tutorialize you on the skill trees, and everything you can get from there are enhancements to the options you rightfully have in the first place, such as auto-looting enemies on assassinations, or getting bonus effects from violently executing someone with a fucking gun. Lockpicking, thankfully, loses the minigame entirely, only has 2 tiers to unlock, and are both accessible very early on. Each twin also gets to have their own copy of the skill tree, so you can spec them differently if you want. You won't have to, as they both can handle all skills sufficiently, and you will be able to unlock everything before the end of all story content and side missions, but a few Master Assassin skills are distinct for each too. Jacob gets a few extra options for open combat, and Eevee gets a few for stealth. One such ability has her turn invisible when she's crouched without moving. Don't worry, she's not actually invisible. It's just an animus trick to show you that she's so thoroughly controlling her vitals that enemies just can't see her at a distance. Yeah, the real explanation also makes 0 sense. The controls for everything are back to being normal and intuitive again, unlike the horrifying Frankenscheme Unity had, requiring both shoulder buttons and triggers to aim and use tools. Here, it's just aiming on the left trigger and firing with the right trigger, like any sane fucking game would do. Also, to keep quick firing tools intuitive, that's back on the top face button again, moving Eagle Vision back to clicking the left stick, something the series learned way back in Revelations, remember. And speaking of Eagle Vision, its weird cooldown timer nerf is gone. What I'm trying to say is, Syndicate fixed all of the issues where Unity randomly unlearned numerous lessons the series had previously already learned. Syndicate even went so far as to fix the broken-ass cover system. You've probably noticed crouching returns, considering I directly talked about it 1 paragraph prior. But instead of randomly having to Gears of War yourself to a crate actively trying to reject your presence, if you're crouched and behind something, it automatically counts that as cover. Gotta say, major boon having a game that can successfully function within its most basic mechanics again. My first real point of contention I want to raise is one of tone. Ask Creed Syndicate is at odds with most of the franchise due to how weirdly cheeky it is.
1 uniform as requested.
It's still warm.
My gift to you?
I will meet you on the roof of Buckingham Palace.
You're such a romantic.
It's very odd to see a game series that frequently leans self-serious, sometimes to a fault, doing this.
Yeah. I'm sure you can put this to better use than I can.
Oh, what's this, Greenie? Assassin Christmas?
Now, lots can be said about Baneshake's Charlie. I'm slightly countercultural, I'm weirdly sexual, the state of Utah is willing to shoot me on sight. I forgot where I was going with that. Cheeky, that's it. I'm already very cheeky talking about this series, so maybe this is just insecurity about the game doing the job for me. But I feel like taking the tone too lightly risks derailing the threat of a global conspiracy that wants to control every aspect of your life. I don't think Syndicate quite gets there, not just yet, but I could also picture the main Templar fighting Captain Planet, so your mileage may vary. Often, it's admittedly quite funny, but some people will find the tone more obnoxious. If you're watching Baneshake, you're probably safe. Also, while we don't get anywhere near the extremes of Unity's historical, mishandling, Syndicate is still definitely not perfect. I never thought I'd say this sentence, but these English people are actually too white. There were a lot of multicultural citizens in the city by this time, due to being the capital of a global empire, and yet outside of certain specific supporting characters, it's wider than my fucking family reunions up in this bitch. The history is also not too concerned with subtlety. There's a great deal of classism and sexism, for example, that gets brushed off for the sake of the tone. And almost any time you meet a new character, it slaps a massive label on the screen so that you know you've met a new character, in case you didn't realize. For historical figures, this approach translates into having generally likable, if highly oversimplified, versions of the real people. The best example is probably Karl Marx, who is actually shown in a far more positive and sympathetic light than I would expect out of Ubisoft or most media generally speaking, but in doing so, they absolutely watered down the rather revolutionary attitudes he held IRL. Another great example is Frederick Aberline, the detective famous for not catching Jack the Ripper later in life, who is one of your main recurring contacts and has a personality entirely consisting of the 2 points, wanting things done by the book and dressing in an old woman disguise. It's surprisingly silly for a man who lost his wife about this time. In a dead way, I'm not saying he misplaced an entire woman. As for original fictional characters, this approach just means many potentially interesting story opportunities get ignored so they can be slotted into the plot wherever a character is needed. Most of the Templars are fictional this time around, probably since the families of real-world capitalists from less than 200 years ago likely have enough money to fucking sue Ubisoft. And while I can't say Syndicate squandered the carte blanche opportunity, they could have done so much more with them. The biggest missed potential comes from one of the game's allies, though. Ned Winnert is a transgender man living in Victorian England. If you were to take that story to its full extent, you could have a deep dive into what that would be like, what additional struggles he would have had to face in an even, somehow, worse time for anything remotely genderqueer. You could even go a step further and show the contrast of the criminal underworld actually behaving more ethically by accepting him for who he is, than purportedly more civilized, law-abiding people. Instead, the game never gets into it. He's trans, and he's good at train heists. That's all, folks. Another thing. Remember that time I threatened to keep bringing up Ubisoft's history of sexism? I'm gonna have to bring up Ubisoft's history of sexism. Despite being 50% of the main characters, Eevee is given noticeably less focus in the main story missions. Originally, it was envisioned to have them actually have equal missions, and Ubisoft said, "No, less girls, we only play with boys." Worse, while her missions focusing on finding the relevant piece of Eden could still have been an impactful plot, They further watered that role down by making her play cleanup for a mission each time Jacob takes out a Templar. The idea is supposed to be that the Templars have made themselves harder to extricate because of the self-sabotaging nature of capitalism, but because it always relegates those memories to Eevee, it feels more like playing housekeeper than it should. Don't worry, she gets her own rival Templar she gets to take down. One! She gets to take down one primary conspirator in London. If you count the tutorial mission and the finale, it goes all the way up to a whopping 2.5 targets, basically. The biggest issue facing Syndicate, besides the missed opportunity to explore more be gay, do crime themes, and the usual UB sexism, is simultaneously one of the least glaring, while most impactful problems I've had to discuss in these videos. This is one of those problems where something can be damned by faint praise. It's a shame too. Syndicate clearly loves the earlier Assassin's Creed entries, and it shows constantly. Not only is the Animus loading screen back, it gives you little lore bits for the series in real-life London too. Not only do memory corridor conversations return, but they even show the targets glitching, standing there, pacing around, a detail taken from the original game. It's fine and commendable that Syndicate is so excited to be an Ass Creed title, but it also really isn't trying to excel by pushing the series in any dramatic new directions. It's far from the worst games in the series, but practically everything it is good at gets outclassed by other entries at this point. Even when its strengths are on par with other games, it will feel too similar to win over more critical audience members. Sure, it'll please a lot of Ass Creed fans, but there is so goddamn much out there designed to please Ass Creed fans. I've written a thesis worth of videos about it. It's called A Briefish History of Assassin's Creed. Maybe you should look it up when you're done here. And sure, I've already clarified that this game wins points just from its chronological existence. It opened this segment. But happenstance shouldn't be the game's strongest selling point. This probably all sounds pretty harsh. To clarify, there's still so much to enjoy here. I still have more things I love up my sleeve for the story breakdown. I just can't go denying something so patently undeniable. Also, if you think this is harsh, you must have missed the hour-long lashing I had to give to Unity. That's right, I'm the one with the use prophylactics in the public square. Storytime. The modern stuff takes more of a backseat than even last time, considering we just get a small handful of cutscene interludes sprinkled in there to keep us up to date throughout. Bishop still just relegates her important work to the initiates, though in her defense, she's lacking her usual tech support this time. Sean and Rebecca have decided their time playing coffee shop in the field translates into real espionage expertise. Don't worry, Sean has whipped up an electric hidden blade. Actually, no, that worries me far more. That seems even more dangerous to the user. They've casually infiltrated the office of Isabel Ardant, a Templar who exists in this game. She's been helping resident mad science guy Alvaro Grammatica with the Phoenix Project, which is why I had to cover all of the Chronicles games last time. They immediately blow their cover to confront her, leading Otso Berg and Violet DaCosta from Rogue to come bursting in like surprise wrestling opponents, forcing a hasty retreat. Bishop's like, that was a fackin' shat show. Maybe you can search through the archived memories compiled from Jacob and Eevee Fry for this week's MacGuffin to move things along. So in the past, Jacob and Eevee are novice assassins working under the sharpest dressed assassin with like 90 seconds of screen time. Hold on, I'll count. 88. He has exactly 88 seconds of screen time. What a waste of a good costume design. Anyway, he assigns them to go after some Templars in Croydon. They both succeed, but Jacob gets a train derailed, and Eevee nearly gets exploded by an apple of Eden, so it's a mixed victory. Because Jacob's Templar mocked him, saying, "Aha, at least London is too secure under our control for you to do anything, neener. They impulsively decide to go against their assassin council's wishes and head out towards London. As we never see any opposition from the council following, presumably the English assassins are more willing to say, "Fuck it, let's see what happens," than the French assassins were. They meet Henry Green, the head mentor of the London Brotherhood, sort of by default, as he's the only assassin until the Fry twins show up. He's actually the son of Arbaz Mir, whom I talked about last time, and he's honestly a real disappointment. He has 0 field skills and barely any more charisma than that. I have daddy issues, and even I support being disappointed in this son. Jacob decides this is the perfect time to live out his spur-of-the-moment fantasy to be a gangster, and so they start stealing the other gangsters to be their own, as well as a gangster train to be their hideout, and I'll give them credit, that's actually pretty gangster. So Jacob and Eevee start to butt heads here, as Jacob wants to penetrate more Templars, but Eevee's more interested in the MacGuffin hideout in London, a Shroud of Eden which can heal any injuries, but explicitly cannot raise the dead. Quick reminder that Assassin's Creed canonically told Jesus to get fucked. He ain't resurrecting up in this bitch.
How much do you know about the Shroud of Eden?
It's said to heal the sick. Popular myth is that it brings people back from the dead, but the assassin records say that's not true.
As we progress, quite interestingly, we get occasional scenes switching over to the head Templar, Crawford Steric, scheming with various underlings and servants. This is unusual for the series, as we typically only get to see what the playable characters are around to see, but it is actually justified here. These aren't Steric's memories, but the memories compiled from all of the other people surrounding him. In the same way Jacob and Eevee's memories had to be compiled here too. It's clear Abstergo has been putting this together trying to find this shroud. Quick lore break, Abstergo actually did have a previous shroud, and then the assassins threw a grenade at it. That's why they need a new one. There's no doubt the modern Templars would know of Steric's work trying to get the shroud, as he's not that far back in history, and Abstergo has direct lineage from the capitalist Templars of the day, but they also don't have his body, so this compilation project has presumably kicked off this whole shindig. The structural back and forth fits the Ascreed formula, tweaked to fit the time period, and while it's not necessarily groundbreakingly different, I still think there are several memorable highlights. For example, Jacob teams up with Charles Darwin, evolution guy, to sabotage a drug manufacturing plant. They find out the Walter White of this opium syrup is a phrenologist, aka he's racist and ableist about skulls. So Jacob canonically pretends to be a corpse and then lets the skull bigot play along too. On Eevee's end, a particularly memorable mission sees her going to Edward Kenway's mansion from Assassin's Creed Forsaken. Now available for sale from your favorite bookstores wherever books are sold for only the low price. With Henry while hunting shroud clues, since bringing the shroud to England was apparently part of Ed's assassin career off-screen. And despite the manor changing hands between owners several times in the 130-some years since he got shanked, it's still full of pirate memorabilia, which is legitimately believable because everyone wants a pirate mansion. And if you don't want a pirate mansion, stop lying to yourself. You do too want a pirate mansion. One target also ends up being possibly the cockiest Templar in the series, which is legitimately a tall feat.
Farewell. Farewell, dear Britannia. Your dawn shall be dimmer that the Earl of Cardigan sees it not.
What a prick.
In all of this, there is one subtler character arc I particularly appreciate for Jacob, and it's honestly my favorite element to him. Jacob doesn't get the same blatant character arc some protagonists get, but he is low-key having to learn and grow from his biggest personal blind spot. It first comes up when he tries to saddle up to an omnibus company owner named Pearl Attaway. He puts on the front that it's all strategic moves to gain an ally against Steric's preferred omnibus company, but it's pretty clear pretty fast that he really desires her respect and maybe even something else. As he does more and more for her benefit though, he discovers Pearl is Steric's estranged Templar cousin, and while she had previously been on the outs with him, by manipulating Jacob's maybe crush on her to her own game, she's gotten herself right back into High Templar favor. Jacob is visibly heartbroken when he goes to penetrate her. It gets even more blatant with a memory sequence which is technically not unlocked chronologically, but after you've conquered certain territories. Jacob has caught the attention of Maxwell Roth, the leader of the Blighters, and while they are technically enemies, and the Blighters are technically working for the Templars, Roth finds technicalities boring and is absolutely fascinated by Jacob. He is canonically romantically interested in Jacob, and Jacob starts behaving pretty identically as he did with Pearl, desiring his respect and maybe even something else. Bow chicka wow wow. Unfortunately, Jacob soon discovers Roth is literally the Joker, baby, when he thinks it would be funny to explode a bunch of children. So Jacob breaks that off real fast. Roth takes the rejection real well and starts murdering people during a stage play and then sets the place on fire. Jacob is, yet again, visibly heartbroken when he goes to penetrate Roth, who absolutely abuses that advantage to get the last laugh, kissing Jacob before dying. The interpretation is that Jacob is a simp around characters he's attracted to. Like, it's not animated Steve Trevor levels of bad.
How does your saying go? The bigger they are, the more they fall down.
Yes, that's it exactly.
And it's actually presented as a personal weakness, where Jacob is having to learn the hard way. It's the character arc of a man coming to terms with his own bisexuality in a setting where it doesn't really allow him to figure it out in a healthier manner. I dig it, considering it's entirely shown instead of being told to us. And to Ubisoft's credit, they confirmed his bisexuality is canon, so it's undeniable. Some people disliked that it was not the most hands-on depiction, and I certainly wouldn't mind a hands-on depiction of Jacob's bisexuality if you know what I mean. But male bisexuality is still so rarely demonstrated in popular media that I count it as a win. So as our Brotherhood of Three is running around and murking dudes and nearly crashing the economy and reverse heisting stuff to uncrash the economy and getting beaten up because Henry is a loser and then dying multiple times in a row in the following NPC escort mission because Henry is a loser, their interpersonal relationships really start to get strained. Jacob and Eevee's differences, and Jacob's constant boners in the mistake sense of the word, caused by his constant boners in the erectile tissue sense of the word, have them both ready to stop cooperating. Likewise, Eevee and Henry have unresolved sexual tension throwing both of them off, and oh my god, you guys, it is so boring. So as they gather all appropriate connections and knowledge and keys to the MacGuffin I probably should have discussed earlier, sorry about that, and circle in on Steric, it rapidly seems like this will be their last mission together. Before we can get to the endgame, there's actually something that pops up to add a little intrigue before the end. So Jacob meets a dog named Desmond. Also, a weird Animus portal pops up, and when you go through, you emerge in World War I hunting down Templar spies as Lydia Fry. Now, despite Lydia looking like a dead ringer for Eevee, she's actually the granddaughter of Jacob. And I get it. From a genetic standpoint, people very often look like an aunt, or a cousin, or someone less directly related. And I get it from a development standpoint too. Starting with Eevee's likeness certainly saved development time, and likewise development money. But I just can't help myself. Jacob, you want to explain why your descendant looks so much like your fucking sister? She still uses a lot of the gear from her grandfather, but the setting itself adds a couple new wrinkles. In addition to anti-aircraft bits, not dissimilar from Unity's World War II snippet, you can turn off generators to lure over dudes who want their power back, and much like Chronicles Russia, there are spotlights associated with snipers and you'll get shot if you get spot. See, you absolutely can make the World War eras work for Assassin's Creed, you goddamn naysayers. The most interesting element in all of this is not Lydia, sorry gal, but her ally, Winston Churchill. Winnie here really complicates things. Thanks to the lore in Assassin's Creed 2, which I have had to call back to in so many videos I might as well just leave it playing in the corner like some weird postmodernist Twitch streamer. We know that Churchill will be working with the Templars by World War II, the Squeakquel. Here though, he's working with the Assassins, and he absolutely indicates knowledge of both conspiratorial treehouse clubs. The game never clarifies exactly what is going on here. Will he betray the Assassins later on? Do the Templars simply get better at concealing their manipulations of England? I suspect the devs wanted a more positive depiction of Churchy, since he's still inexplicably popular to so much of the world, despite the fact that he was unapologetically into eugenics and absolutely had a personal tier list of races, or that he wrote in a memo, quote, "I am strongly in favor of using poisoned gas against uncivilized tribes," end fucked up quote, or that he let FDR look at his pee-pee one time. Not making that up. Real history. But by doing it this way, the devs have legitimately made the canonical version of Ascreed's Churchill a guaranteed worse version. For a long time, there has been a debate about how in the Templars the leaders of World War II were. Did the likes of Churchill and Hitler know they were working with Templars as members? Did they know without being official members? Or were they completely in the dark? Because that last one's completely off the table now. Not that it matters much. He knew he was supposed to smuggle Hitler away after Hitler faked his death at the end of the European front of the war, but then the Assassins actually killed Hitler, blue-balling Churchill. So he's canonically a real bad person regardless, and it's too late to change that now, Assassin's Creed. Also, when you've done his missions, we get snippets explaining why this portal has popped up. Juno, still stuck in the internet in case you forgot, is using this memory so she can exposit at you. A lot of it is recapping stuff we already know, or even stuff we have already gotten to see, but it does occasionally have glimmers of new details, like one teensy little detail. The entire name of the race of precursor beings, the Isu. That's right, it's kind of funny in hindsight, especially how willy-nilly I've been tossing around the word in this video series, but Assassin's Creed didn't officially name the Isu race until this game, right here. I actually knew this was coming up, so I deliberately avoided using the term Isu in the last video, just for funsies. Go back and rewatch the whole thing while also liking and commenting and sending it to a friend if you don't believe me. The big pick is just that Juno is still up to some shit. Shock of all shocks. Also, somewhere in there, we're reminded about Sean and Rebecca a couple of times. Very little happens, though Sean does give a sweet little requiem for Desmond at one point before getting jump-scared by Galena, a character you will have no context for if you haven't explored the extended material in depth, and, at least as of late 2023, is not in any of the other games. Don't bother studying her, she will not be on the test. So finally getting the plot back on track, our actual protagonist assassins sneak into the Queen's Ball because Buckingham Palace holds the shroud, and because Sterrick is also going to be there wearing his nicest thiefin' suit. Eevee goes in first, in a dress, deliberately calling back to, of all things, Liberation and the Lady Persona's limited moveset. And while she locates the paperwork containing the location of the vault and makes friends with the Queen, Sterrick forces Eevee to dance with him because he replaced all the guards with his own snipers to steal the MacGuffin key, but also so that he can exposit to someone about how he'll use the shroud to become an immortal capitalist. Damn it. Jacob easily takes out the thugs because he isn't in a dress and signals for Eevee to nard Sterrick.
I never liked balls.
Sterrick gets a head start to the shroud since he has some testes to heal, and becomes a boss fight suspiciously visually similar to Germain from the last game, though parkouring around force fields and getting in a knife fight is more interesting than doing the exact same stealth takedown on loop. So point Syndicate. The twins take turns trying to stab a man who keeps healing like Wolverine, and Henry shows up to get exactly 2 hits in before getting his ass kicked by a man wearing a silly-ass preacher stole. Eevee and Jacob finally realize they should press their advantage in numbers, cut the medicine rags right off of him, and double-team that motherfucker. Henry and Eevee finally become an official couple, boringly, and we have, what is probably the absolute silliest ending in any of these fucking games. As they leave the vault, goddamn Queen Victoria comes rolling up and knights them before our main characters go sprinting away in a foot race like school children. It gets even sillier when you know about the post-game side missions, where they break up with the Queen for imperialism. Seriously, she has a series of side missions where she tasks them with stopping the lingering surviving Templars who are like, shit, now what do we do with all these explosives? And at the end, apropos of nothing, the Queen is like, y'all want to go do some imperialism? And the twins are like, no, we do not, in fact. And dump her. With the location of the Shroud confirmed, Sean, Rebecca, and Galena move in, but the Templars are already there. They go on the offensive, and an original song starts playing for no explicable reason.
Them done the horrid murder on bloody stages that loudly corrode their humility.
Galena fails to kill Otso Berg, but Sean does at least manage to kill Isabel, showing just how slow, inefficient, and if I may, absolutely cruel Sean's electric hidden blade actually is. Rebecca takes a bullet saving Sean, and the last thing we see before their drone footage cuts out is Sean holding Rebecca, begging her not to die. Don't worry, we'll get to follow up with them again. Way out in Valhalla, fucking Christ. Bishop, perhaps trying to distract us from the mood whiplash of watching our heroes utterly fail in their task with ambiguous casualties, shows us some hacked video footage from the Phoenix Project labs. Grammatica has been trying and failing to clone a precursor, but now with the Shroud's restorative tech, he should have no issues restoring an Isu. He leaves, but Violet DaCosta turns to talk to a pewter. She's secretly been working with Juno since Rogue to restore Juno to a physical form so she can re-enslave humanity, something that is so much closer to fruition now that they have the Shroud. The end. And I really mean the end on this one, because this entire plot thread, which has been building since the ending of Assassin's Creed 3, or even technically before that since Juno was using the modern arc of every game prior as part of her plan 2, would later mysteriously go missing from the actual Assassin's Creed games. Fucking Ubisoft literally took the main thing these games were building towards and shoved that plot off into the comics where most people were not going to see it. They practically turned the modern arc into all of those post-credits scenes in various DC movies that led the audience fucking nowhere. I will someday be lying on my deathbed, and my loved ones surrounding me will be like, "Do you have any regrets?" And I'll be like, "One." And they'll be like, "Was it the time YouTube pulled your satirical Captain Aquafresh video because the jokes were too edgy?" And I'll be like, no. And they'll be like, "So it was the time you were so desperate to get out of the worst job of your life that you went to being an insurance salesman for a company far more interested in building a corporate structure bordering on a pyramid scheme instead of preparing employees to actually be good salespeople?" And I'll be like, "You're getting a bit personal there." And they'll be like, "Oh, so it's the funny shape of your peen?" And I'll have to cut them off to explain that my one regret is never getting this plot thread again in the original medium. There will be an awkward pause, and then my loved ones will be like, "That's dumb. You're dumb. I'm glad you're dying." And then I will cease to exist in any meaningful sense of the word. At some point, once I have the games a bit more under control, I'll do an episode covering the comics, because they legitimately do add stuff to the series, especially furthering the modern plot in a way the games are too cowardly to do at this point. Remember back in Brotherhood when 16 said this to Desmond?
"The son. Your son.
Cause one dangly little plot thread, this part,
Your son."
even gets picked up by the comics while handling Juno's stuff. It is interesting. However, since Syndicate wasn't allowed to resolve anything, neither shall a briefish history of that one. For real, the end. That's the crux of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but it's actually going to grace us with enough additional content to justify the next episode. So if you didn't do so during my diatribe at the start, consider subscribing so you can get Jack the Ripper next time. I'll also be getting a briefish history of Batman Arkham back on track soon, so now's a great time to catch up on the first 2 episodes if you haven't watched them yet. I've recently crossed 4,000 subscribers, something I never could have fathomed back when this series started out, technically under a different name. So I thank you all for your amazing support. I'm always trying to keep various projects on my radar to keep things interesting here on Baneshake. But until next time, I'm gonna go see if I can find a hands-on depiction of Jacob's bisexuality. Arno can get cucked.